Throughout human history, we have gazed at the stars and wondered, are we alone? But what if the question isn't whether they exist, but rather how long they've been here? Watching, influencing, perhaps even controlling the trajectory of our civilization? Tonight, we invite you on a journey into the shadowed corners of contact, where governments whisper, witnesses tremble, and the truth remains just beyond our grasp. This is not fantasy. This is testimony, documentation, and decades of evidence compiled from military files, civilian encounters, and brave souls who dared to speak. When people today picture an alien, one image dominates: small, hairless, with oversized black eyes and featureless gray skin. These are the Greys, and their story begins with terror on a lonely New Hampshire road in 1961. Betty and Barney Hill were driving home late at night when a craft intercepted them. Under hypnosis, they described beings with enormous heads and dark, wraparound eyes. It was the first detailed account of what we now recognize as the Greys, and it changed everything. Soon, others came forward, people who had never heard of the Hills. The descriptions remained remarkably consistent: small in stature, between 3 and 4 feet tall, though some reports describe taller versions reaching 6 feet. Their bodies thin and hairless, skin smooth and gray, sometimes pale, sometimes dark. But it's their eyes that leave the deepest impression. Large, almond-shaped, black, and utterly unreadable. Witnesses say these eyes communicate without sound, projecting thoughts and images directly into the human mind. By the 1,970 seconds and 80 seconds, reports of gray abductions surged. Ordinary people found themselves missing hours of time, only to later recall under hypnosis experiences aboard strange craft. Many told of being placed on examination tables, of tissue samples being taken, of procedures that resembled medical experiments. Dr. David Jacobs, who spent decades studying these accounts, suggested the Greys were engaged in a vast program of genetic manipulation, using human DNA to prolong their own species. For those who lived through these experiences, the trauma was real. Some suffered nightmares, phobias, and the persistent sense of being watched, yet others described moments of strange connection, as if the Greys were not merely experimenting but also delivering a message that humanity was at a crossroads, and its future mattered beyond Earth. A popular theory links them to the star system Zeta Reticuli, about 39 light-years away. This idea took root when Betty Hill described seeing a star map aboard the craft, later matched by amateur astronomer Marjorie Fish to that system. Others believe the Greys may not be extraterrestrial at all, but time travelers, future humans returning to study their ancestors. Still others suggest they are interdimensional beings, crossing from parallel realities into ours. What makes the Greys difficult to dismiss is their consistency across cultures and decades. Thousands of people across the world describe nearly identical beings despite vast differences in background, belief, or exposure to UFO lore. For skeptics, this is proof of cultural contamination. Stories repeating because people have seen the same image in films or television. But for believers, the opposite is true. The culture only reflects what witnesses were already experiencing. The Greys stand as the central archetype of alien contact. They are the surgeons of the abduction room, the silent watchers in the night, the beings who embody both our deepest fears and our sense that something greater is watching. They represent cold efficiency, clinical detachment, and the unsettling possibility that humanity is not the apex of consciousness, but merely another specimen in a cosmic laboratory. But they are only the beginning. Because while the Greys symbolize cold detachment, other encounters tell of beings who are radiant, almost angelic, figures who bring messages of peace instead of fear. As you drift towards sleep tonight, let your mind wander through these testimonies. These fragments of contact that refuse to be forgotten. The Greys are watching. Always watching. And their presence raises a question that echoes through the decades. What do they want with us? And more terrifyingly, what have they already taken? Before the Greys dominated modern accounts, another type of being was already making its presence known. These visitors were not short or menacing. Instead, they were described as tall, radiant, and almost angelic. They became known as the Nordics, or sometimes the Space Brothers, and for a time they offered a vision of contact that was hopeful, even uplifting. The story of the Nordics first gained traction in the 1950 seconds during what came to be known as the contactee era. It was a time when UFOs filled headlines almost daily, and a number of individuals stepped forward claiming not only to have seen the craft, but to have met their occupants face to face. Unlike the fear and trauma that would later characterize abduction accounts, these early encounters were often filled with messages about peace, unity, and the dangers of nuclear war. One of the most famous contactees was George Adamski, who in 1952 claimed he had met a being from Venus in the California desert. He described the visitor as tall, with long blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and an aura of warmth. According to Adamski, this figure communicated telepathically, warning of the destructive path humanity was on, and urging an end to atomic testing. His story was ridiculed by skeptics but inspired countless others to share similar encounters. The label Nordic came later, drawn from their resemblance to Northern European features. They were said to stand between 6 and 7 feet tall with fair skin, golden or platinum blonde hair, and eyes that were often described as unusually vivid, blue, violet, or piercingly bright. Witnesses spoke of an almost angelic quality, as if the beings radiated calm simply by their presence. Unlike the blank faces of the Greys, the Nordics were expressive, showing emotion and intent through their gaze and posture. In the early years, the Nordics were often portrayed as messengers of peace. Many of their supposed encounters revolved around warnings about humanity's destructive capabilities. During the height of the Cold War, when the threat of nuclear annihilation was on everyone's mind, these beings were said to caution against atomic testing, urging humans to live in harmony with one another and with the planet. To those who experienced such encounters, the Nordics were not invaders but guardians, concerned with guiding a young civilization toward a more enlightened future. These stories were not limited to the United States. In Europe, contactees in Italy and Sweden reported encounters with tall, radiant figures who stepped out of silent craft and attempted to communicate. In South America, witnesses in Brazil and Peru described similar beings, warning about environmental destruction and offering advice on how to preserve the planet. Despite the geographical distances, the accounts shared the same imagery: tall, human-like beings with blonde hair, radiant eyes, and a calm but commanding presence. As abduction narratives began to overtake contactee stories in the 1970 seconds and 80 seconds, Nordics continued to appear, though often in a different role. In these accounts, they were no longer the messengers of peace standing alone. Instead, they appeared alongside the Greys, sometimes acting as overseers or interpreters during abductions. Some witnesses described them as providing comfort during frightening medical procedures, while others said the Nordics observed silently, their intentions unclear. This shift from saviors to supervisors added a new layer of complexity to their image. Where did the Nordics come from? Many contactees insisted they hailed from the Pleiades star cluster, more than 400 light-years away. Others linked them to Venus or Mars, though modern science has made such origins unlikely. Some researchers suggest they might be advanced versions of humanity itself, time travelers from the future. Others see them as symbolic projections of our collective desire for benevolent guidance during turbulent times. What makes the Nordic archetype so compelling is how sharply it contrasts with the Greys. Where Greys are seen as cold and clinical, Nordics are warm and human-like. Where Greys evoke fear of dehumanization, Nordics embody the hope of spiritual evolution. And yet their motives remain as mysterious as any other. If they truly exist, are they here to guide humanity? Or do they play a role in the same larger program attributed to the Greys? The Nordics remain one of the most fascinating and enduring alien archetypes. They stand as a counterpoint to the fear and trauma of the abduction era, offering instead the possibility of guidance and kinship. Yet even within their seemingly benevolent presence lies uncertainty. Are they protectors, watchers, or collaborators in a larger plan beyond our understanding? Not all alleged visitors are described as gentle or enlightened. While the Greys inspire fear through their detachment, and the Nordics through their enigmatic beauty, there is another archetype that embodies something far darker. These beings are said to be tall, muscular, scaled, and reptilian in form. They are often linked to control, secrecy, and manipulation, both of individuals and of entire societies. In the mythology of alien encounters, they are the Reptilians. Reports of reptilian entities go back long before the UFO era. Ancient civilizations spoke of serpent gods, dragon-like beings, and lizard-headed rulers. In Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki were sometimes depicted with reptilian features. In Mesoamerican lore, the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl combined human and serpent aspects. In Africa, the Zulu tell of the Chitauri, reptilian beings who came from the skies and interfered with early humanity. These myths lay dormant for centuries. But in the 20th century they resurfaced in a new context, not as gods, but as extraterrestrials. Witness descriptions of reptilians vary, but certain traits are consistent. They are said to stand between 6 and 8 feet tall with scaled skin that ranges from green to brown. Their eyes are often yellow or red with slit-like pupils resembling those of snakes. Their bodies are muscular and humanoid, but their faces carry a distinctly reptilian cast, elongated snouts, ridged brows, and sharp teeth. Some accounts describe tails or crests, while others portray them as more subtly lizard-like. Unlike the Greys, who appear clinical, or the Nordics, who seem benevolent, the reptilians are almost always described in terms of hostility or domination. Many abductees who claim to have seen them describe feelings of intense fear, even before the being spoke or moved. Some suggest they possess a form of psychic control, able to instill terror or manipulate perception. Others claim the reptilians use Greys as subordinates, directing abductions and experiments from behind the scenes. In modern UFO lore, the reptilians became especially prominent in the 1,990 seconds, popularized by conspiracy theorists who suggested that these beings were not only visiting Earth but had infiltrated human institutions. Writers like David Icke advanced the idea that world leaders, monarchs, and elites were either controlled by or secretly reptilian themselves. According to this view, the reptilians feed on human fear and suffering, maintaining control through war, manipulation, and secrecy. Not all accounts are purely conspiratorial. Some abductees report direct encounters with reptilian beings during abductions. They describe being taken aboard ships or into underground facilities where tall reptilian figures supervised medical procedures or issued commands to the smaller Greys. These beings were often described as cold, authoritarian, and utterly uninterested in human well-being. In some stories, however, the reptilians appeared not as overlords but as warriors, entities driven by survival and dominance rather than secrecy. The question of their origin remains as speculative as with other alien types. Some link them to Alpha Draconis, the star system in the constellation Draco. Others place them closer, suggesting they may inhabit subterranean realms beneath the Earth, hidden for millennia. The idea of reptilian races within the Earth has roots in both folklore and esoteric writings, where tunnels and underground cities are often associated with serpent-like beings. Skeptics point out that the reptilian archetype fits deep-seated human fears. Throughout evolution, humans have had to contend with predators like snakes and crocodiles. The image of a reptilian predator standing upright and intelligent taps into something primal within the human psyche. It may be that these visions arise from cultural symbolism and unconscious archetypes rather than literal beings. Yet for those who claim direct encounters, the fear they describe is anything but symbolic. The reptilians also serve a symbolic role in modern mythology. They embody the idea of hidden control, the suspicion that humanity's destiny is not entirely its own. Whether through conspiracy theories of governments controlled by alien forces or ancient legends of serpent gods manipulating mankind, they represent the darkest possibility, that humanity is being farmed, fed upon, or dominated by a force it barely perceives. The reptilians stand as one of the most unsettling figures in alien lore. They represent not just the possibility of other beings visiting Earth, but the idea that those beings may already hold power here, shaping events in ways we cannot see. For believers, they are a hidden enemy. For skeptics, they are the embodiment of ancient archetypes. For all, they leave behind the lingering question, who really holds the reins of power? Among the many types of beings described in abduction accounts, few are as unnerving as the Insectoids. Where Greys seem clinical and Nordics radiant, the Insectoids are truly alien. Witnesses often describe them as tall, thin, mantis-like creatures with elongated limbs and large compound eyes. They are usually portrayed not as background figures but as leaders, the ones directing operations, supervising medical procedures, and guiding the smaller Greys. The earliest descriptions of insect-like aliens emerged alongside abduction reports in the 1960 seconds and 70 seconds, though they never reached the same level of notoriety as the Greys. In case after case, abductees spoke of figures that resembled praying mantises, towering over both the Greys and the humans. Unlike the Greys, who carried out tasks with clinical efficiency, the Insectoids were said to observe, communicate telepathically, and radiate authority. Abductees often report the Insectoids as being between 7 and 9 feet tall, with spindly frames that appear fragile yet imposing. Their heads are triangular with large, slanted eyes that give the impression of depth and intelligence. Their skin is often described as green, brown, or gray with a texture that suggests a hardened exoskeleton. They rarely speak aloud. Instead, witnesses say they project thoughts directly into the mind in a way that feels commanding but not always hostile. One of the most striking aspects of these accounts is the sense of hierarchy they convey. Many abductees report Greys performing medical examinations or gathering samples, but with a mantis-like being watching silently in the background, overseeing everything. Some describe these Insectoids stepping forward only when necessary, to calm a frightened abductee or to ensure a procedure is carried out correctly. Others say the Insectoids are the true architects of the hybrid program, directing genetic experiments that blend human and alien DNA. In some accounts, abductees describe feeling an unexpected sense of calm in the presence of these beings. Despite their terrifying appearance, the Insectoids are often portrayed as wise and purposeful, as though they are scientists or philosophers with a broader vision than the Greys. But just as often, witnesses report feelings of dread, the sense that they are facing a superior intelligence that regards humans as little more than resources. Theories about the Insectoids' role vary. Some researchers believe they represent the upper tier of an alien hierarchy, with greys serving as their workers or drones. In this model, the greys are not independent beings at all, but bioengineered tools. While the insectoids act as the minds behind the hive, others argue that the insect-like appearance may be symbolic, a projection of human fears about conformity, control, and the loss of individuality. After all, insects on Earth live in highly structured societies where the individual is expendable and the colony is all that matters. This symbolism resonates deeply with human anxieties. The idea of a hive mind, of losing autonomy and becoming part of a collective intelligence, is one of our greatest fears. Science fiction has explored this theme repeatedly, from alien queens commanding drones to the assimilation of entire civilizations. The insectoid archetype seems to embody this fear, presenting beings who are intelligent, purposeful, and utterly indifferent to individual human desires. Some abductees, however, describe moments of profound connection with insectoids. They report visions of ecological collapse, warnings about humanity's destructive habits, and pleas to care for the Earth. In these encounters, the insectoids seem less like overseers and more like guardians, trying to steer humanity toward survival. Whether these messages are genuine or part of a larger manipulation remains unclear. But they add nuance to an otherwise frightening archetype. Skeptics argue that the insectoids are nothing more than projections of the human subconscious. The praying mantis, with its alien appearance and predatory habits, is a natural candidate for the mind to seize upon when constructing a nightmare. Under hypnosis or in altered states of consciousness, the brain might blend familiar insect shapes with the idea of a superior intelligence, producing the archetype of the mantis-like alien. Yet for those who claim to have seen them, the experience is no dream. Abductees consistently describe their encounters as more real than ordinary memory, vivid and unforgettable. The consistency of the descriptions, the triangular heads, the towering stature, the sense of authority, suggests something deeper than imagination alone. The insectoids represent one of the most alien of all reported beings. They are not familiar in the way Nordics are, nor clinical like the Greys, nor overtly hostile like the Reptilians. Instead, they embody the concept of the other in its purest form, beings that are intelligent, powerful, and utterly different from us. For some, they are wise teachers. For others, they are terrifying overseers. For all, they leave behind the impression of encountering something far beyond human understanding. Among all the alien archetypes, none cut closer to the human experience than the hybrids. While the Greys are cold and clinical, the Nordics radiant, and the Reptilians predatory. The hybrids sit somewhere in between, beings that appear partly human and partly alien. For many abductees, encounters with hybrids are the most emotional and disturbing of all, touching on reproduction, identity, and the possibility that humanity itself is being reshaped. The idea of hybrids emerged strongly in the 1980 seconds when abduction researchers began noticing repeated patterns in testimonies. Women reported eggs being taken. Men described sperm extractions, and many told of mysterious pregnancies that suddenly disappeared. Researcher Bud Hopkins documented the case of Kathy Davis in his book Intruders. She described having fetuses removed during abductions, only to later be shown children who looked partly human and partly alien. These encounters carried not only physical trauma but profound psychological weight. The physical descriptions of hybrids vary. Some appear almost entirely human with only subtle differences, unusually large eyes, thin bodies, or oddly pale skin. Others look far more alien, with oversized heads, grayish complexions, and a fragile presence. Many abductees describe the hybrids as emotionally distant, staring intently but struggling to express feeling. Children shown to abductees are often described as weak, needing care, or curious but detached, as though trying to learn how to be human. Perhaps the most unsettling element is when abductees are told that these children are theirs. Women recall being forced to cradle hybrid infants while being told, "This is your child." Men describe being shown children who looked vaguely like them but with unmistakably alien features. These moments strike deeply at human instincts for protection and connection. Some abductees describe overwhelming grief at being separated from these children, while others feel violated, as though their parental instincts were being manipulated for control. The purpose behind the hybrid program remains debated. One theory suggests the Greys are a dying race, sterile after centuries of cloning, and are blending their genetics with humans to save themselves. Another view is that hybrids are being prepared to live among us, gradually integrating into human society. Researcher David Jacobs even proposed that some hybrids, whom he called hybrids, could already be living on Earth undetected, their differences subtle enough to pass as human. Accounts of hybrids are not limited to the United States. In the United Kingdom, abductee Hilary Porter described repeated encounters and being shown hybrid children. In Brazil, women have reported mysterious pregnancies and visions of hybrid offspring. The consistency across cultures is striking. Procedures focused on reproduction, encounters with children who are neither fully human nor fully alien, and the sense that these beings are vital to some larger plan. For abductees, the hybrids are not symbols. They are remembered as real, as vivid as any waking memory, and their presence leaves a lasting mark. For some, the encounters are devastating, filled with grief for children they can never raise. For others, the experiences are haunting but carry a strange sense of destiny, as if they were chosen to participate in something larger than themselves. But beyond even the hybrids lies another mystery, one that challenges everything we think we know about the nature of alien contact. Not all researchers believe these visitors are travelers from distant planets. Some argue the truth is stranger, that these beings are not extraterrestrials at all, but something closer, slipping in and out of our world from dimensions we barely understand. They are often called ultraterrestrials, and their presence suggests that what we call aliens today may simply be the latest interpretation of something much older. Medieval peasants reported angels or demons appearing in times of crisis. Folklore across Europe is filled with tales of fairies abducting humans, leaving them dazed with missing time accounts almost indistinguishable from modern UFO abductions. Indigenous traditions around the world tell of star people, sky beings, or trickster spirits who interact with humanity in ways both helpful and harmful. If all of these are masks worn by the same underlying intelligence, then what we call aliens today may simply be the latest interpretation of something that has always been here. As you drift into sleep tonight, consider this. Perhaps the question is not where they come from, but rather how long they've been here, watching, waiting, shaping our fears and our imagination. The Council of Archetypes remains. The Greys, with their cold detachment. The Nordics with their radiant promises. The Reptilians lurking in shadow. The Insectoids directing from above. The hybrids caught between worlds. And the Ultraterrestrials slipping through dimensions we cannot see. Until the answers arrive, we are left only with testimony, with patterns, and with the unsettling certainty that we are not alone. Sleep well, traveler. They are still watching.